Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar with the Stanley brothers. My name is Emily McFarlane. I'm the Senior Campaign Lead here at Birchal. And just before I introduce our presenters today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm beaming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Today, I'm joined by Oliver Zugel and Jesse Stanley from the Stanley brothers. Jesse Stanley is one of the 7 Stanley brothers and has played an integral role in the development of the popularization of CBD oil, particularly with the creation of Charlotte's Web in the US. And Oliver Zugel is the founder of Foliumed and will be bringing this offer to Australia. So Birchal here is working with the Stanley brothers on an upcoming crowdsourced funding offer. So a few of you might not be familiar with what crowdsourced funding is, or CSF. You might also know it as equity crowdfunding. So it's a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors, also wholesale and sophisticated investors through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as a bank or venture capitalists, companies can turn to the general public, and often this is their communities, to raise money in exchange for equity in their business. So Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer. I just want to remind everybody who is listening, the information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes and should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. So please do your own research and always consider the offer document and general CSF risk warning before investing. If you need any more information or if you've got any questions, please just head over to birchal.com. So before we get started, today's session will be run by myself, Oliver, and Jesse. They're going to take us through a great presentation, which will be approximately 20 minutes, all about the Stanley brothers, where they've come from, what they're looking to do with this capital raise with Birchal, and then we'll switch to a Q&A session. So if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. So if you've got any questions during today's session, please pop it in the Q&A box, and as we go along, we'll eventually answer these at the end. We're also recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, a recording will be sent around. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jesse and Oliver.
Thank you, Emily. I will start. My name is Jesse Stanley. I'm one of the 7 Stanley brothers. I also have 4 sisters, large family. And we all have worked together since pretty much we've been born, trying to make it a family business. That's important, I think, to us as we start here, because, business for us is a reflection of our family. And so it's taken us a long time to get into the next steps and chapter of our lives, which is here today. I've been in the industry for about 16 years. And through that, I've met a lot of people. I've met a lot of great players. I've seen a lot of great companies come and go. And so it's exciting here to pitch to you guys today. Jamie, can you move a couple up? So with that family that we started, I have a new family now. It is the Australian Stanley Brothers team. Oliver Zugel, who'll be presenting with me today. I met Oliver about 4.5 years ago, and we talked about this strategy for quite some time. And it's taken us a long time to get to this point today, mostly because it needed to be the right timing. It needed to be the right demographics and geographic region to operate this way. And that's why we're here today. Through that, we've met a lot of people along the way. I'll go through a couple on the team. Jamie Cahalan and Mark DeLuca have been with me at Stanley Brothers in the US for really since its inception. They've helped develop the brand that you'll see today and have been instrumental in our growth and strategy. Jordan O'Donnell is a local Australian who is I've gotten to know over the past couple months. He came on as head of sales. He has a wealth of knowledge in the Australian market, as he's been in the industry pretty much since inception there. We're excited about that. And then lastly, Mark Ziegler, another veteran in the cannabis industry, who has been cultivating in California and has brought his business from California to Las Vegas to Colombia, now to Australia. Some of our milestones in our business, there's quite a few of them. Obviously, for those that haven't tracked our story, I'm going to go into it a little bit. But my brothers and I have been in medical cannabis really since 2008. But 2009 is really when we got started, and we have seen the industry really evolve from gray market to the black market, back to gray market, to what it is today, which is thriving in the US in different states, and is expanding worldwide. And I think we've seen that with countries like yourself coming along and offering a medical marijuana program. We're seeing it in Colombia, which is where we operate and cultivate. You're seeing it all over Europe. So we're super excited about that. Having been in the beginning, we have a lot of experience in that aspect. I think some of the milestones that have changed our lives, which I'll talk about, is meeting Charlotte Figge. Charlotte Figge has changed my family's direction, changed my family's purpose, and we haven't really looked back since. Through that, we met Dr. Sanjay Gupta in 2013, who put us on a documentary, which really set us off to the moon as a cannabis company. And then through the years of success, we're also the first company to do an IPO, and most companies do reverse mergers or back into a shell. We were operating long enough to have audited financials, which we're very proud of in the cannabis industry back then, and a developed business that we could go through the front door on an IPO. And then to bring us into today, we launched Stanley Brothers Cannabis because that's where we came from. Before CBD, we were in medical marijuana in Colorado and treating people very similar to what the Australian market is today, in a regulated market, dealing with doctors, clinics, and patients. It is now at this time that we've assembled Stanley Brothers Australia. And in Q1 this year, we launched our flower products and did a deal with Vitura Health, which we're very excited about, which we'll get into here in a little bit. So the beginning. So this is, I think, the most impactful part of who we are, not just my family, but the family that we have here today and those that will be involved in our family as people that purchase, patients, clinics, doctors that prescribe, and potentially investors. We met Charlotte Figge in 2009. Charlotte Figge was 5 years old at the time. She had a catastrophic epilepsy called Dravet syndrome. In this syndrome, she had over 300 seizures a week, very, very severe drop seizures. And her mom, not mentioned, Paige Figge, was really the hero. She had done her research on CBD and found that CBD had helped stop epilepsy, and in some research that was going way back into the 80s. We were developing CBD at the time. She found us. She convinced my brother Joel to give Charlotte her first dose of CBD. It was about a week without seizures. After that, we kept our expectations in check. We were very excited, obviously, but it wasn't until the second week and the third week, as her seizures were being controlled, then the community started telling the story. We had our next patient, Zakai, whose mother is also instrumental in our story, had over 400 seizures, I believe, an hour. And he went, I believe, 7 years seizure free, and is now actually celebrating his 21st birthday. I have an invitation for that. So these stories are why we exist. Jamie, next. Because while we did start as a business, we really turned into a mission. As Sanjay Gupta told our story, initially, cannabis and hemp specifically wasn't legal. It was all kind of lumped into the same category in the US. At that point, it was legalized later in 2013. But before that, about 15,000 people joined our waiting list, mostly parents that had children with debilitating diseases. And they saw amazing effects from what is now affectionately known as Charlotte's Web, named after Charlotte Figge. Recently, unfortunately, in COVID, she passed away. But the story was so impactful that on April 7th, Colorado named it Charlotte Figge Day, and we just celebrated that. So she is our North Star, so to speak, and why we do what we do. And we are blessed to not only share her story, but share thousands of other stories of other people that have been helped, not only pediatric cases, but adults. And we're excited to bring that to Australia. Jamie next, sorry. So yeah, the legacy. So with this story, obviously it's very impactful. Some that have heard it, some that haven't. It's put us on the map. It's put us on the map in cannabis. From a CBD standpoint, Charlotte's Web has experienced the highest of highs. We were the #1 brand and still are. I won't go into a lot of this type of stuff, but the reality of the brand allowed us to use trust and authenticity because of what our product was, as opposed to just people that got into the industry as an opportunity. We really, I believe, created the opportunity in this space. It's something I'm very proud of. It's something my brothers are very proud of, my family's proud of, and I hope that investors can be proud of as well. Jamie, next. So now with the opportunity, I'm going to pass it over to Oliver Zugel, and I'll be back soon.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and hello, and very good morning to everyone. Well, I'm going to talk about where we see the opportunity in the market, and frankly speaking, 5 years ago, the opportunity in Australia was really all about having products. Yeah, if you had products which were scarce at that point in time, it meant that you had business. But how things have changed. Nowadays the products are in abundance. And the real challenge has become how a patient or a prescriber can cut through the clutter of literally hundreds of lookalike formulations. And now I think the industry has matured to a stage where a brand like Stanley Brothers can make the difference. It makes the choice easier for the patient and for the prescriber, and particularly for the vast majority of people who haven't really used cannabis before. So educating doctors, I think, is another key part of the equation. And as of today, the prescribers are no longer new to the game. They know what they're talking about, and they are really looking for deep insights from producers like ourselves and brands of ourselves of how they should be handling the prescribers, not just a pile of certificates of analysis. And the patients themselves have become more informed, and given that you can't market to them directly, given the advertising restrictions, I think you need to find alternative ways of getting there. And finally, I think, as we all know, the prices are coming down, and you need to have a low-cost position to be in the business. And so against those opportunities, how we are positioning ourselves. So one, I think of Stanley Brothers is a global and a trusted household name, therefore makes the choice amongst product easier. We have a set of unique and innovative products, whether those are landrace strains, which I'll be talking about later, or flavor-intense vape cards, which are extracted without solvents. I think we do products which are not the standard middle of the road. Thirdly, I think we have a science team which has over the last 15 years published more research and study than most people in the industry. That gives us credibility with the prescriber community. And we have, I think, one of the world's lowest cost operations, which means that we can weather any storm really and be the last man standing. So it's the combination of all four factors, I think, in our mind, which makes this proposition so strong and why we think we're well prepared to tackle this opportunity. In terms of how do we compete? This is a place where there are lots of competitors. The medical cannabis industry has attracted many companies early on. And I think we look at four things where we believe we do have a competitive advantage. One, I think the brand is well recognized and has exceptionally well carried over from the US into Australia, as we have seen over the last 90 days. I think we have a very unique and differentiated set of products, whether those, as I said, are landrace flower, solventless vapes, or edibles. We have a deep science and IP assets in place. So I think that experience has evolved over the last 15 years. And finally, we have, I think, a very good cost position. Jesse, you'll talk about the brand.
Yep, the brand. Something easy for me to talk about, as my name is the brand. Jamie, go ahead and go to the next slide. So I think the unique opportunity in Australia, something I'm really excited about, is that it's really our roots. It's medical cannabis. It's not recreational yet. It's medical cannabis. And my brothers and I operated in that space for 5 years. We operated in that space when it was really hard, whenever there was no banking, there was no opportunity. You had to you had to build your business grassroots, and that really starts with patience. We got into this industry. I remember the first article that came out about us was we were the Robin Hoods of marijuana. And that is because we always put the patient first. I'm proud of my brothers, and I can call them out by name. Josh, Joel, obviously myself, John, Jordan, Jared, and Jay Austin were all the letter J, I know, and so are my sisters. But the countless hours that we spent with the patients, understanding what the patients needed. And I think that is the credibility that we've built because of authenticity and what we tried to build. Dosed products before there were any dosed products, really trying to get to the education and the science, asking for research to be done. And I think with that, all the stories that we've gotten, obviously Charlotte Figge, but there were countless others before and countless others after, has given us that sort of quote unquote, the world's most trusted brand in cannabis. And I think that's the unique thing in Australia, because that's where we're at today. We're at patients that are looking for other opportunities. And because of our history in cannabis and the science and the research that we've done, I believe we offer some of the better solutions as it pertains to differentiation as far as a brand. What we have seen in that same time is obviously Charlotte's Web is known for treating what people would say epilepsy. And that's what it got its recognition for. It's turned into something different. It's turned into a therapeutic mainstream. It's turned into vitamin C. It's turned into something you could put in your coffee. It's turned into something for everyday stress, anxiety. CBD has exploded. It's no longer thought about in that way. That being said, it still fits the other categories well. There's an approved drug on the market since we got in that was really piloted after us. And many of you know, called Epidiolex. So cannabis is unique in that way. It fits so many categories, but our brand has been built on being really the first one to bring that to market, the trust, the science, and the education, which brings it last to the prescribers. Australia is a unique market in that it is prescribed by doctors and you get it in pharmacies and clinics. I love that. My brothers love that. I think the opportunity for us to come in and bring education and the knowledge that we have from what we've seen, both observationally and also some of the research that we've done, really, I believe, sets us apart, not only with the doctors to be willing to prescribe our product, as opposed to somebody else, but also for the patient that has seen the stories to be able to ask for it. That comes at no cost other than the 16 years that my brothers and I have been in this business to try to create a reputable name that's backed by science and trusted. Hear me next. I skipped one. Maybe go back one. Back one. Well, so in that same time, my brothers and I, at that time back in the day, before we ever charged patients, specifically palliative care patients, we were giving it away for free. We were selling into the medical marijuana industry and giving it away. We created a nonprofit called the Realm of Caring, which eventually created the world's largest database of cannabis users, which allowed us to understand what was working, what wasn't working, and set our products different, whether that be THC, CBD, or minor cannabinoids. But we're looking at that from the same angle in Australia. So we're going to be committing to giving products away to palliative care patients, people in end of life. And we're looking forward to do the same thing we did in Colorado, the same thing that we've done in the US, to bring that to Australia. Go ahead, Jen. And I think that's, again, what sets us apart. You know, my brother Joel and I came down last August, and you know, we landed and went immediately to I believe it was Channel 7 News, Sunrise. And because of our story resonates with so many people and so many people have heard it, we get the opportunity for what people called unpaid media. It's one of the most valuable assets that we've had as a company, both Stanley Brothers and Charlotte's Web, as we've been featured in so many different news publications and media around the world. But since coming to Australia, really in less than a year, I think we've had all the major ones, because at the end of the day, yes, we are a brand, we are a mission, we're also storytellers. Our goal is to build the medical cannabis voice back, to give the voice back to cannabis, to teach people that, hey, this was the ancient way to remedy. People have used this for 1,000 years. It's not something to be afraid of. It's something to be trusted. It's something to respect. And we're looking forward, my brothers and I, to really activate in Australia, not just with Stanley Brothers Cannabis, but my brother Joel, who actually is probably listening, is the CEO of a biotech company that is currently in a clinical trial in Australia that we're very excited about, that he has launched, and we'll be bringing other clinical trials to Australia. So our commitment to Australia goes beyond this. Our commitment to the earth as the world's first pharmacy and plants, and discovering what we were so lucky to see in cannabis and how it helped Charlotte and many others. Our goal is for the rest of our lifetime to discover that. Go ahead, Jamie. So we'll go into products. Go ahead, Oliver.
Yeah, I'll take over from there. Thank you, Jesse. So in terms of products, probably good to know, so there's some principles here, which is carefully sourced products, a unique, consistent, and a quality which is made in a sustainable way. Let me illustrate to you what this means. So for the last 50 years, breeders of cannabis have largely selected plants with one primary purpose, which was to maximize THC psychoactive potency. And that is what the recreational user has demanded, but it's not really what many doctors feel is most suitable for the patients looking for therapeutic effect. So what we did is we went back to the roots and rediscovered some original called landrace strains in Colombia, which have been used by the native communities there in their healing ceremonies for hundreds of years. These are the rare strains whose genetics haven't been modified and who carry the full spectrum of cannabinoids and compounds which are needed for maximum therapeutic effect. So we grow these plants on the foothills of the Andes on our own farm, surrounded by pristine water and air conditions. And the sun at that location is of such an incredible intensity, given it was so close to the equator and at 2,500 meters elevation, that it really brings out the very best in the plant. Go ahead, Jamie. Next one is, apart from flowers, which is what we currently have on the market, we will be launching additional new products, which we're very excited about. Next in line are live rosin vapes. That's a particular way of extracting cannabis without using any solvents. It's fundamentally like doing an orange juice. It's very flavorful, has a lot of terpenes inside. It's a very labor-intensive method, but it's, I think, one of the premium and high-quality products which you can see in the vape cartridge market. We also are committed to bring the original formula oil into Australia. We have been asked a lot why we haven't done this earlier. That's the formula with which Charlotte was treated originally. That's earmarked to come in October, and we're working on the manufacturing plan for the full spectrum edibles, which should be coming early in January 2025. Those are all, I think, in our mind, quite special, unique products, and we will be plugging them into the existing sales channels, which have already confirmed their interest in taking them on. In terms of our cost position, I would like to make a bit of an analogy here, which goes as follows. I mean, the Australians, I've learned since I've spent the last 5 months there pretty much, you're very proud, and rightfully so, of the great coffee you're making. But fact is, you're only growing 1% of coffee in Australia, and over 80% comes from South America. And cannabis, I think, once deregulation makes global trade easier than it still currently is, I think will be grown inevitably in regions where it can grow naturally in the sun, not in heated and air-conditioned indoor facilities. So that's why we chose many years ago Colombia as our home for growing cannabis. And frankly speaking, have never regretted it since. It's good quality, we have good labor force, the climate is good, And it enables us to grow, as you can see on this chart, at a fraction of the cost of competitors either in Canada or in Germany for that matter. So we grow, and most people grow in Colombia at about 25 cents per gram of dried flour. That compares to in Canada an average of about $2 to $2.50, and in Germany $4. So, and that really matters, of course, in an industry where prices are constantly in decline. So I think this was very important for us, and therefore what I also wanted to say, what's a big advantage here is that the expansion potential you have on our Colombian farm is enormous. We're currently having installed capacity of 10 tons. That's about a third of the total annual demand of Australia. It can be expanded to 70 tons at very limited capital cost, less than $100,000 per ton. So frankly speaking, first for you to imagine what you're looking at here, you can produce the entire demand of Australia on a size of 4 Melbourne cricket ground fields. That is all you need to produce the entire cannabis which is consumed in Australia at this point in time. So as you see the magnitude at which I think some of these growths can be scaled up, I think it is quite amazing.
Thank you, Oliver. Science and IP. Again, kind of going back to the brand, my brothers and I have been on a mission to, as it says here, debunk the myths of cannabis. You know, being in it for as long as we have been, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot observationally. We've learned a lot anecdotally. But what we do know is that our job and Charlotte's job, and what I think we're here for as a company, is to break the stigma. And how do you break the stigma? Well, people have tried for years and years to say that cannabis is, you know, medicinal and all these types of things. It took a little girl to change people's minds and to change people's laws, and really to have this opportunity that we're at here today. And for really all of the companies here, we owe that to Charlotte and the children, that lives have been changed by the science and by some of the research, that some of the stuff we've been doing. I think the unique opportunity for us is because of the history and because of how we've done it. When we first started into this developing products, you know, when Charlotte was seeing effect, we couldn't change the product, and we weren't going to change the product. So with that, it developed the most standardized product. We've taken that practice into our other businesses as well, and also have tried and have willingly worked with the FDA to try to get CBD regulated. What that has come with on our side, obviously, is all kinds of research and studies that needed to happen. And that's been a wealth of knowledge to the industry in and of itself. We've partnered with, go ahead, Jamie. We've partnered with a very close friend, Dr. Marcel Von Miller, who was just with me in Australia for kind of a roadshow, and he really has become a brother and family, like most do that come into to our business. But this man has more research papers than anybody, white paper research on cannabis. I believe that his relationship with us and through our companies allows us to educate not just the consumer and not just the final patient, but the doctors, the clinics. They want the information. Doctors, clinicians, the people that are prescribing want information, and these researchers want to give it. So we have surrounded ourselves with the who's who. I've talked about Marcel Von Miller, the CSO of Charlotte's Web, and sits on the board of the drug development company that my brother started. Joel, also on here, while not a doctor, knows more about cannabis and plants than most people that I've been around. He's the CEO of Ajna Biosciences, which is currently doing the clinical trials. And then we have access to people like Ryan Vandry, who at Johns Hopkins University helped build the largest database of cannabis users in the world at the time. And all of that information has allowed us to steer where our products are going. Not just to make a product that sells, but to make a product that's efficacious and that is replicatable. That's something I'm very proud of as a brand, that I think we can stand on, that others simply can't. They can stand on our research as well, and there is research that's being done. but to the level that we've been able to do it and to the level that we're going to continue to do it, that's something that I'm very proud of, as I said, and we look forward in partnering in Australia to continue the science to bring better products to the market and build the market that we're currently going to be operating in. Next.
Yeah, so I will
Go ahead,
be
Oliver.
talking. Yeah, I'll be talking to the next section. So it's quick highlights of commercial financials, and probably let's start with what our actual global corporate structure looks like and what's the relationship between Foliumed and the brand, Stanley Brothers at this point. And I'd like to start with a question, which is, yeah, if you had the choice to invest in cannabis, well, in cultivation, in manufacturing, or in selling branded products, where would you go? And I've invested in all three, and clearly selling medical cannabis is where all the margin is in the entire value system, because you're owning the relationship with the prescriber, you own the relationship with the patient. If the product works and the brand resonates, that's really where the margin is. By investing in Foliumed Australia, which is the company which licenses the Stanley Brothers brand, you get the best of both worlds. You don't need to put any capital into cultivation or manufacturing, which are actually low margin businesses, which require a lot of capital and are very complex to manage. We have done that already over the last 10 years. But at the same time, you're getting the benefit of getting a consistent quality at one of the world's lowest prices from a facility we own. So it's actually best of both worlds. You don't need to invest into manufacturing and cultivation, but actually get access to something which we control. And therefore the control of the supply chain, I think for us overall, I think is very important. So I think as a comparison, probably if you had the opportunity to either run a Chemist Warehouse franchise versus building your own pharmacy, it's a big comparable, right? You're getting a brand, you get an established operating system. That's what you're getting by investing in Foliumed Australia, which is fundamentally a sales and marketing business. So now some commercial highlights since our launch in January. So we signed and are very grateful for having reached an exclusive multi-year agreement with Australia's #1 publicly listed distributor, Vitura Health. They provide us with access nationwide to 8,000 pharmacies, clinics, and doctor offices. The flower product, which is our initial launch product, is now widely available through the Vitura's CanView ordering platform. And we have established now direct relationships with 20 of Australia's largest prescriber groups and sponsored several industry and medical practitioner events. It has been, frankly speaking, very busy last 4 months, but very rewarding at the same time. And I think the commercial progress we have made, we're very proud of. In terms of financial indicators, since our launch, so we have over 90 days since we arrived in the country and started to market the product. We have achieved revenues of 1.4 million Australian dollars with a gross profit of 833,000, so 60% gross profit, and made a net profit of 424,000 Australian dollars. So it's a 30% operating profit. I think that shows that we have cash on hand of $400,000 and have no debt on the balance sheet. I think this shows very much that we're not a startup of some sort, but that what we're actually doing is leveraging infrastructure which we've built over the last 10 to 15 years with total invest of around $15 million, which came from our own pockets, to now monetize this in a sales and marketing setting. That's really the advantage, and only then can you make a profit of 30% being operative only for 90 days. That's in a normal startup setting. You cannot do that. That's not viable. It explains why we're looking at these type of numbers. In terms of revenue growth and where we are heading during the remainder of 2024, building our revenue base from having done 1.4 million in the first 90 days, I think in our case is strikingly simple. We will be increasing the number of doctors, clinics, and pharmacies. We've reached by now perhaps 60%, 70% of the demand. I think there's still quite a lot of building we need to do. That's why we're increasing our sales force. That, by the way, will be use of funds from this raise to a very large extent. The second area of revenue growth is expand the product portfolio. I've told you about it. The vapes are coming in July. The oils should be there in October. Edibles at the beginning of 2025. All of these products are developed. They are already well beyond the prototype stage. They're arriving actually relatively soon in Australia at this point. So it's plugging new products into existing sales channels. That's relatively straightforward to do. There's nothing speculative. You're not entering a new market, not creating a new geography, not creating a new business line. You're fundamentally plugging more products into a customer who's already buying. And finally, we are looking at providing a product offering to the value-focused patient segment. We will talk more about that when this has further advanced. It's important to us here. We are not positioned for value buyers at this point. Our price point is kind of in the middle of the market. I think we want to be out in the market with a value offering, and you will hear more from that as the progress on that evolves. Now, in terms of valuation, I think there's an interesting bit of history I'd like to talk to you about. And as in any early growth, in any early stage industry with high growth, your cannabis has attracted pretty lofty valuations, which very often have been underpinned more by hope streams and sometimes greed than facts. But as the industry is now coming of age, many of these dream balloons have popped. I think rational thinking is reappearing with companies and investors needing for the company to show performance on traditional metrics, profits, cash flow, revenue, of how you would value any other business. And I think this is giving opportunities for companies like us, most of them by now privately owned, who have survived the storms of the past, by going out to sea with proper food and water rations, a clear destination, and a course in mind. I think gives us an opportunity to shine in that new world where I think investors will come in more on facts than on promise, because many of the expectations have been disappointed over the last 10 years. So what we're committed to at this point is to offer investors a great deal, not the least because a significant number of investors are patients at the same time. And therefore, I think we are really not only interested in investors who put the money in, they're actually part of the community building. And that's, I think, very important to us. So we're currently in the process of reaching out to very many of you to get inputs on what such a good deal and what a good valuation will look like. And we will have that process concluded towards the end of next week. In terms of use of funds, all of the funds we will be raising are going into sales and marketing efforts. So fundamentally, it's more salespeople, better doctor education, an impactful product launch, event sponsorships. And the media engagement, which Jesse talked about before, is key for this. And our media engagement isn't product-centric. So we don't talk about product. We cannot talk about products in the media. But we can talk about the stories of patients and what we're doing in Australia and what we have been doing in different places around the world. That's unpaid media. And therefore, I think a very important part of promoting our product out there. Any of the funds which are being used are dropping directly to the bottom line. So the components of each of them can be optimized. We will see what works best, what drives the best return. And it's really not dependent on total amount raised. I mean, it's like the more fuel we put, the more revenues we'll be generating. So it's not something where we say we need a minimum number to even be able to exist. We're already profitable. But the more fuel we'll put in, I think the more revenue we'll be deriving. And so wrapping up, I think why would you invest in Stanley Brothers? I think there are 5 points we would like to make. First of all, I think this is an industry with positive tailwinds, and we really are just seeing the beginning. There is a lot of upside from deregulation and consolidation happening. Right now, I think the patient numbers is just scratch of the surface. If this is being played out right, I think we'll see about 10 times more patients over the next 10 years. So that growth really has just started. And there's a lot of upside when the industry kind of starts to consolidate, become more mature from this initial craziness, which we have seen over the last 5 to 10 years. Secondly, I think you're looking at a company with an experienced senior executive team. There are gray hair around. That's again not very typical in a startup, but in our setting it is. And it's people who have put their own wealth into the business. So we at Foliumed never have really raised any meaningful amount of money. This has all come from the wealth of the founders. So we have put our money where the mouth is. It's the same in this venture. So we will be thinking about this very much in the way you do. So the business model, I think, is attractive. As we said, if you're focusing on the customer relationship and the brand, that's the most valuable part in the entire cannabis system. And it's pretty easy to scale with low capital needs. You fundamentally need more people. It's a fixed cost business. By the time you drive up the revenues, the margins go up. So it's actually the best part of the value system somehow. We have strong competitive advantages and a proven ability to make it through in tough market conditions. COVID wasn't easy for anyone. We sailed through it. We made it. Wasn't easy, but here we are. And finally, we don't consider ourselves a startup. We've been around for 15 years, and I think investors will have the opportunity to harvest a lot of these benefits by coming with us and become part of our community. So on that note, thank you very much. And I think we'd be ready to take all your questions. Much looking forward to them.
Thank you so much for that. That was an incredible presentation. And actually, a lot of the questions that came up during the presentation were answered. So thank you so much. Can you give a little bit of an understanding for the viewers of what the existing Australian competitive market looks like?
Yeah, I'll talk to this. So probably going back in where the industry started, 5, 6, 7 years ago, then it was, I think, as I said, all about product, having product made the business. Since then, I think the competitive landscape has become very diverse. By now, hundreds of brands and products, I think, on the market, many of them very similar. And I think the competitive environment is tough, frankly speaking. So I think it's comparable to some of the highly competitive markets we would be seeing in the US. And therefore, I think you need to be pretty clear about what your source of competitive advantage are, what your cost position is, whether you have a brand, you don't. So I think this is by now becoming a pretty interesting marketplace where I think you will see a lot of consolidation. And you have seen in Australia over the last 12 months, a lot of the early entrants, some of the early entrants exiting and having difficulties. And that's not surprising. Your prices have been coming down. So this is a industry which has its challenges, and therefore I think it's forcing all of us to be very focused about what we do.
Thank you so much. Obviously, the regulatory environment in Australia is quite different to that in, say, Europe, the US. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of how medicinal cannabis currently sits within the therapeutic guidelines and the Australian federal government as a whole?
So what I can talk to is from comparatively, I think when looking at other countries, and I think the back part, I may not be able to answer in the level of detail they're looking for. But as I think we discussed in our podcast, I think Australia is probably the best regulated, in my mind, most sensibly regulated medical cannabis market in which we operate. And we operate in 8 different countries as Foliumed at this point. It's a, I think, very sensible regulatory scheme, which isn't over-regulated, isn't under-regulated. There are always in regulation things which can be done better. But I think the framework is solid. In my mind, the fact that it's medically controlled, I think is key. The ability that telehealth can be done, I think is very positive. So one of the big attractions we had of coming to Australia was precisely that. We felt it was a very well-regulated scheme.
I would add to that, I think from a product standpoint, like it takes time. I mean, the US, Colorado is one of the first ones to really regulate, and I think regulate properly. But it takes time, from a therapeutic standpoint. It starts medical, it goes sometimes recreational cannabis, and then the therapeutic side, like CBD being potentially over-the-counter type of idea, takes some studies, it takes research, and I think all that's being done. I think dominoes are falling around the world. I was just in Europe. It's moving quickly. I feel like it's just the telephone game that we're playing in cannabis from company to company, industry to industry is just starting to reach around the world, and Australia is pretty far away. But I agree with Oliver. I think they've regulated it very well. It excites me because it's medically backed as opposed to a loophole. Obviously, there's players that will find a loophole to get cannabis grown, all that type of stuff. But I like regulation. I applaud regulation. I look for regulation in an industry. I mean, to be honest with you, I wish there was further regulation in parts of America on cannabis, and we've had this for 16 years. So we are excited about it, and I think that there are challenges for sure. I think we all know some of them, but those challenges, I would, for no pun intended, weed out the bad players. I think that's probably the competitive aspect. Going back to that is how many brands come to market, a patient gets used to it, and then it's not available anymore. Because it is hard to stay in this business, and there are a lot of fly-by-night groups. I think, you know, my brothers and I, and our brand's history, having been in it as long as we have, you couldn't consider us a fly-by-night. So I stand on that. But so with that, you know, the competitive side of it, Oliver's 100% right. Having been in the industry, I know where the market is going. I've seen where the market's going. I've been where the market is, and I've had the conversations of what high THC and terpenes and all that stuff. And I've been in a market before there were edibles and vapes and all that stuff. So I've seen this play out, and it's always different, but it generally, there's nothing new under the sun. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just doing it with a different product. So I think with Oliver's expertise in regulation specifically, he didn't get to talk about that. I think we'll be able to navigate the minds that could be out there, and I'm excited about the opportunity.
Awesome. So obviously you've covered a lot around the regulatory environment and how it differs. Do you know if there are any plans in Australia for recreational laws to change?
Yeah, I know. I would say that that's a little bit of ways away. Not being in the room on those conversations, but you know, I think our goal as a brand is to row the boat to where the market is going, to show proof and efficacy, to not be a bad player in the industry, but to grow the market, the pie, so to speak. And I think then people can recognize it, more users that are using it. I think the less stigma there is to it, to put that in correlation. In Colorado, when they legalized, everybody was like, oh, the sky's going to fall, and their teen use and driving fatalities and more crime's going to go up. And coincidentally, none of those things happened. In fact, all those went down. So I think as industry expands and more people use it and understand it and realize that this is not something to be afraid of, it's something to respect, and it's something to be educated on, it's something to research. I think that then you get closer to the recreational market that I think everybody wants to get to. But as everything, you've got to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. So I think we're kind of in the trying to crawl stages in Australia.
Awesome. And in terms of that, I know you've been through your use of funds, but are you investing in potentially, working with the government in Australia to influence these bodies and influence these decisions going forward?
I'll touch this, and then Oliver can touch on it a little bit. So I mentioned earlier my family's company, Ajna Biosciences. We hope that some of the clinical research that we do opens up doors of conversation with regulators so that we can better educate. I am, again, not a doctor. I obviously have a lot of history in this industry, and I've seen a lot of amazing things, but we would love to bring our researchers and our teams down to have better conversations around the regulations and moving things forward, and basically be a resource to them. But we're going to do that by investing in Australia as it pertains to our business, Stanley Brothers Australia, but also ancillary through Ajna by doing research here, and hopefully showing the efficacious nature of CBD as a potential biotech drug as well. So that would be my short answer to that. No invitations have been put forth, but we would love to be a resource from what we've seen to help further regulate, or just to answer any questions that they might have.
Oliver, did you want to give a little bit of your flavor to this?
Well, I've been operating in regulated industry for 30 years, and what Jesse has been saying, that's before cannabis. I also was in regulated businesses, so this is, and therefore you work with regulators all the time. And I think the relationship with the regulators, one of give and gets, and where we actually, I believe, have a lot to give because of the experience we can bring to the table. That's not so much a function of money. So it will not be a significant use of funds, frankly speaking. It's actually dedication of time, management resources, and you're sharing the know-how which we have. And we'll be delighted to do this. That's, I think, what we're doing in other markets very close to us. We have very close relationship with the governments in Colombia and Brazil at this point in time. I think it's part of our DNA. Would love and actually very much welcome it.
Great. Thank you. I know there's a lot of people who are listening in on this webinar who are in the medicinal cannabis space in Australia. And a few people have asked if there are any specific requirements to become a local distributor.
So I'll give a very general answer to this, which is, yeah, you will need to get yourself licensed. So, and the licensing process, yeah, for becoming a distributor is onerous, as it should be when you're dealing with narcotics and controlled substances. So it's fundamentally a licensing procedure. Beyond that, we're not in the distribution business. I would be talking out of pocket, so can't give much more insight than that to the person who asked.
Yeah, I think it's probably then a question around potentially therapeutic CBD hemp. Currently, it fits under the medical cannabis program with the TGA. I think that if it goes to, I believe your guys' classifications are different than ours. I think Schedule 3 is over-the-counter type of products. If it goes to that, then I think there's different conversations to be had there, but it hasn't gone there yet. So really, the answer would be, as Oliver said, but our hope is that potentially non-intoxicating cannabis products can be over the counter in the future. But that's going to take a little bit of time, regulation, a little bit more research to come out.
Obviously, at the moment, all of these products are made for therapeutic benefits and to compete in a medicinal sense. What other therapies will this potentially be competing with?
I mean, really great question. I think my answer to that specifically is one of an answer that I'm very proud of. I think THC and CBD helps stop opiate use. I think that's what it competes against, is potentially solving some of the opiate crisis, not just in a medical marijuana or medical cannabis regulated industry, but as drugs come out. But I think that's what we've seen the most is driving fatalities, people drinking less. So I would dial in CBD specifically, something as benign as vitamin C, something that you should be taking every day, that we should be taking every day. Our bodies have an endocannabinoid system, and the cannabis plant happens to have cannabinoids. So I do think that we should be taking it, and specifically some of the non-intoxicating ones, every day. And I think that what that has shown from a health perspective, and I won't get into all the science of it, is that it triggers so many different parts of our bodies and helps us get into what we would call balance. So I don't know if it competes with some of the other dietary supplements out there as much as it complements other products. But I think specifically one that I'm very proud of, and that Oliver I know is proud of, is that in the opiate crisis that we have, I think that cannabis is lowering the dependency on that. And actually, research is showing that a little bit of a mixture could be really great. So I can't divulge a whole lot of that information, but I think the start of where we're at today is going to be the next wave of the health revolution, where people are looking to the ancient way to wellness and marrying it with Western medicine as we know it today to better get control of some of the things that we're dealing with that, we haven't really dealt with in the numbers that we are today.
Thank you. That was a really great answer. So in terms of your product portfolio in Australia, you mentioned that you're quite competitive in terms of price. Where do you guys sit in terms of a price point when looking at your competitors?
Yeah, so we are pretty much, so you have, let's put this into three segments somehow. And I'm now only talking about the flower product because that's what we have launched with. And I think you have your premium flower, which is about, let's say, $150 per 10 gram bag. So 150 and up, we're not competing in that. Then there's like the mid segment where you're around 120 to 130. That's where we are currently positioned. And you have the concession market, which I was kind of alluding to earlier on, which is the market below 100 Australian dollars for 10 gram bag, where we're currently not in, but where we are considering making an entry of some sort at some point in time. And so we're kind of in the middle of that, the mid segment, I think, and that's where most of the larger brands, which of the top 5, let's say, where they're concentrated, with the exception of one very large brand who's in the value segment and is really dominating that.
Yeah, fantastic. So I know that you're opening up this opportunity for everyday Australians to invest. How important is it to you to have Australians on board who might be on the lower income spectrum?
It's incredibly important. I mean, you know, my brothers and I started by community. It started by people that, like I said, when our first major crop that needed to be successful when hemp was legal was planted by the families that had children that were sick, that needed this plant, that wanted to come off the wait list. Community is everything to us. It's how we built almost all of our businesses, specifically at the beginning. And we're going to continue working with community. I expect you'll see that in the future in everything that we do. So it doesn't matter how much you can invest. It's about being a part of the family and the community, and being educated and passing the word on. Word of mouth is everything, especially in this industry where it's hard to market. But the larger the community, the better for us, we believe, from a patient standpoint. So we invite patients that believe in us and believe in our products to obviously invest and be a part of this. But it's not a 10 people writing a check. It's as many people writing a check, being a part of a revolution that can follow our story, that can tell this story to people that don't know, so that we can build opportunity for people to have access to cannabis, not just in Australia, but as other countries come along. So I'm from a large family, as I said, 7 boys, 4 girls. I welcome it to be as large as possible. It doesn't scare me, so come along.
Amazing. So currently you've mentioned that you have Vitura as one of your main distributors. Is that an exclusive distributor license, or do you have other local distributors in your network?
No, it's an exclusive arrangement with them, which again we're very positive about. In exchange, what we were getting from this access to these 8,000 pharmacy networks, we're getting introduced to some of their own VIP clients, including Doctor on Demand. We have really been having a great start with the company together, and it's an exclusive multi-year agreement.
Great. So can you give a little bit more of an understanding of the relationship with Foliumed versus Stanley Brothers, so that people can understand how this works in Australia and for the offer that's coming live?
So probably going back to the corporate structure chart, there are Foliumed has a holding company which is up in Spain, and then has 4 subsidiaries. It's a German subsidiary, a Brazil subsidiary, an Australian subsidiary, and a Colombian subsidiary. And everything outside of Australia is largely cultivation and manufacturing. And so therefore, investors in the Australian business do not own any of the other businesses. They don't own the cultivation, they don't own the manufacturing. What they're owning here is fundamentally the commercial relationship we are building of the brand, which is licensed by Foliumed from the Stanley brothers. So they own the commercial relationships we're building between the company, the brand, and the prescribers and the patients. And that's, I think, where all the value is. So think about it somehow, perhaps, as I said, perhaps it's like a Chemist Warehouse franchise of some sort. So you don't own the brand, really. You don't own the cultivation and manufacturing, but you do own the customer relationships. And that's really kind of what ultimately this is all about, and what makes the business interesting, because it does require very little capital. It's a fixed cost business, and therefore it allows you, when you're starting to move more volume in, you're expanding the margin that drops down to the bottom line. So I think that's how the relationship works. And Jesse, as he has referred to, I know Jesse now for 4 years. We had COVID in the middle, which was making things a little slower than we would have wished, but has helped us actually to establish kind of our thinking of how we wanted to go about this. So it has been a long-term journey, I think, for the two of us, and we're very happy of how it's been going.
Amazing. With your new community that you're planning to bring on board, what will the insights be looking like for them as shareholders in the business, and how can they contribute to the business's decision-making going forward?
Again, you cut out. I apologize. It just cut out a little bit. I didn't get it.
That's okay. So the question was, with bringing on this new community of investors, moving forward, will they have any opportunity to speak to you about future decisions for the company? How would that work?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Inputs everything. We're currently working on our, I would call what you would call investor relations, of how we communicate, whether that be a quarterly newsletter that comes out to you guys, offers and suggestions. We want to, let you guys know how the business is doing. But, I think one of the unique things for us is, while, I'm here in New York City currently, and my brother's in Colorado and Oliver's in Spain right now. The majority of our employees are Australian, so there are boots on the ground, and we will be listening to not only investors but patients of how to better improve our business. But that's a really good question. Obviously, I would love to be available 24/7 to answer questions, and I really am, from an aspect of, if you're a part of our company, we will treat it as a family and give the information necessary for people to feel confident in their investment and in the community that they invested in.
Amazing, thank you. So I know that you can now purchase Stanley Brothers products in Australia. How widespread is the distribution across the country?
Well, through the distribution agreement we have with Vitura, they're reaching 8,000 pharmacies. So fundamentally, at a point in time when you are entering now onto the ordering platform of CanView, you can get the product delivered through the 8,000 outlets where it goes through the pharmacies. So I think you can get it anywhere through that system.
Fantastic. So for those who are on the webinar and are interested in learning more about the products, how can they reach out to you?
Jesse, you want to do first? So for me, it's quite simple. So also during the entire campaign now, we've been very active. I would recommend that you can track us on our respective LinkedIn profiles. I'm a quite frequent publisher of what's going on in the company, where we're heading. So that's a good one. I also we are actually reaching out to a significant number of investors who have demonstrated interest to get inputs on the valuation and what our fundraise program actually is looking like. So we're welcoming that. So I think many people on the call may already have my phone number. They should just feel free to actually ring me up, and I will do my very best to respond. So I think that's part of the fun of it. We really welcome that and would like to make ourselves as much available as we can. I don't know, Jesse, what you
absolutely. I think LinkedIn passage from that aspect of questions is obviously available, but through the Birchal platform and some of the names that we're getting on the list, like, we will be reaching out. And if you haven't been heard, keep knocking on the door. But we're going to get back to people. We expect a lot of involvement and inquiries. But our team, beyond Oliver and I, will be reaching out to people, and I look forward to it. So but the way to do that is pure and simple. I think the EOI is still out, and sign up for it, and we'll just reach out, one of us or someone from our team.
Thank you. I can tell that everybody is really passionate about getting involved, and you can see that through all of the questions asked. Do you believe that going forward, your community that you'll be bringing on board from this crowdfund raise will be instrumental in deciding where your product portfolio will go next in Australia?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, they're the ones that are potentially, patients, and they have, you're on the ground and you're got your ear, to the ground listening to it. I think between that, the expertise that that we bring to the table, my brothers bring to the table of what we've seen. If you think that collaboration together, I think we can develop the best products. Obviously, it takes a little bit of time. I don't want to move like a cruise ship, but we're probably not a speedboat. But we have a good idea, I think a good pathway on products that we want to develop. Anybody that knows me knows I'm an innovation guy, and I want to be the first to market on just about everything. And my brothers are still on. They laugh because they want to probably punch me for all the suggestions I've made. But I think we have a pretty good pipeline. I think that's a really great idea, though, that whoever asked the question is to create some type of forum for other ideas. The fact of the matter is right now we are limited by what we can do in the regulations, but where we can, within regulations, come out with new products and steer new product development, we will. My hope is minor cannabinoids, more need state based, obviously edibles, gummies, things like that, live rosin vapes, but really do everything where the market meets the standard that is today. That means businesses that have been around for 15 to 20 years, as opposed to the startup where Australia is now. So we hope to use our wealth of knowledge to get the best products to the market sooner rather than later. But love the idea, and we can figure out a way to collaborate on that.
Fantastic. Well, we might wrap up here, and thank you so much to Jesse and Oliver for such an insightful presentation, and thank you also to everybody who joined today for the investor Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of this video will be sent around to everybody who registered, so just in case you have missed out on anything, you can go back and watch the recording. So the Expression of Interest campaign is live for just under 2 more weeks, so you can jump on the Birchal platform and check out the pitch video, company profile, and when you're there, you can either express interest or you can reach out to the team if you've got any questions at all. The early access offer period will be open to those who express interest for the first couple of days. So make sure you get your expression of interest in so that you've got access to the offer document and all the key terms of the offer before it opens to the public. So thank you so much for coming, everybody. And thank you, Jesse and Oliver, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Birchal team. And thank everybody for getting up in the morning to listen to us and listen to our presentation.
Thank you so much, everybody. We'll chat soon.